Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
That sounds much more like a labor welcome. Welcome to the Greater Green Bay Labor Temple. Very proud to have you here today and everything. Looks like a nice group. Thank you for coming and that. And I will say that labor is doing everything that they can in this election to put the candidates into place that are friendly to labor. So with that, I will turn it over to Craig.
Good morning. My name is Craig Carlson. I am Dr. Lyerly's partner, and also I am a local police officer for over the past 25 years. I met Dr. Lyerly in 2020. At that time, it was pretty tough for the country. It was going through COVID, and also George Floyd was happening. And Dr. Lyerly at that time was running for state assembly, and she was hearing the banter on both sides. Black Lives Matter, strong police unions on the other side. And she really wanted to get a perspective of a real-life police officer, somebody local. And also at that time, my daughter was going to med school, and Dr. Lyerly was her mentor. So in their talkings, Kristen knew that I was a police officer, so she asked my daughter if she thought I would be willing to sit down and talk about some things. And my daughter's like, well, he's kind of a conservative guy. I really don't know if he'd be willing to do something like that, but I can ask him. And Dr. Lyerly said, well, tell him I'll take him out for some beers and then we can talk. So that's all it took. So I decided to meet with her, and obviously that was the best decision I ever made. So during that conversation, we were there for over 3 hours, and it wasn't Democrat versus Republican. It was nothing political. It was two people talking, two people understanding different perspectives. And Dr. Lyerly listened. She asked some very tough questions, and honestly, that was the first time that I ever really thought or really was able to express some kind of feelings that as a police officer you hold a lot of things back. But obviously during that time there was a lot going on, a lot of questioning of how we were doing things, and the 3 hours was great. I learned a lot. Aside from that, she just didn't want to hear it. She wanted to see. She wanted to see what was going on. So she asked if she could do a ride-along, and we set that up. And she'll tell you it probably wasn't super exciting. You never know. Police work is, a lot of times it's dull, but then you need to go. So it was a lot of her learning what we do, asking lots of questions, and that's one thing she is very good at, is asking questions. And I had opinions on everything. You know, I've been doing this for a very long time, and one thing I learned is there are other perspectives, and that's probably the most important thing that I've learned is why do people do what they do? And if you don't know backgrounds or understand that, you know, it's not black and white, things are different for everybody. And there was a lot of times I would pull somebody over, a minority, and be like, man, why is this person so nervous? Why are they shaking? Why are they just moving all over the place? And obviously you would think, well, they're guilty of something, but that's not always the case. It's their life experiences, things that make them do what they do. And if you don't understand that and don't realize that they make those decisions based on their life experiences, that can change police work or change what happens to them very quickly. So after the ride-along, we continued conversations and continued learning. You know, I've learned things aren't black and white, as I've said. And she's one that doesn't accept things for as they are. She's not afraid to ask those tough questions. And as frustrating as it is, like, just let me have my opinion, please. Don't make me explain this. But honestly, you get to be a better person if you can totally understand a different side of things. So there's documentaries and things that we've watched. You know, January 6th, as we're going to have a couple speakers here talk about. You really learn a lot about people and a lot about politics. And I think Kristen is the perfect person to go to Washington. I think she can reach across the aisle, like Gallagher had done in the past, Reed Ribble, Steve Kagan. You know, everybody needs to work together. Let's not make this Democrats and Republicans. Let's do what's best for America, and importantly to me, let's do what's best for police officers. So that is why I think Kristen is the best person for Congress, and that's why she has my vote.
Well, thank you, Craig. Thanks for your service, not only here, but across our world. My name's Dave Mahoney. I had the great honor and privilege of serving as Dane County Sheriff in Madison for 15 years. 15 years of a 41-year career in law enforcement. In my previous life, before being elected sheriff, I was a local, state, and national labor leader. So I saw in Washington, D.C., when many of our legislators could actually talk to each other across the aisle. When the work of the people was the priority rather than politics. As sheriff, I served as president of the National Sheriff's Association, representing sheriffs all across our country. Over 3,000, almost 4,000 sheriffs in each of our 50 states. Today, I also serve on the executive board for police leaders for community safety, a national organization concerned about legislation across our country ensuring public safety, the rule of law. That's why today, you might ask, why is this sheriff from Madison, Wisconsin in Titletown? It's because over the years, I've had the privilege of interacting and talking and working with Dr. Lyerly. Somebody who cares deeply about the citizens in our community. Somebody that I know will make a priority to sit down and talk to those on the other side of the aisle, who can have a respectful conversation on the needs of our communities. Today, we have a broken nation. We're still suffering. And I still get emotional about what occurred at our nation's capital on January 6th. And how elected officials called upon extremists to attack police officers. Police officers who have dedicated their entire career to serving others before oneself. That's what makes a good cop. That's what defines Dr. Lyerly. A commitment to serve others before oneself. I was in Madison when Act 10 occurred in Wisconsin. And I had the distinct pleasure of standing at the doors of the Wisconsin Capitol to ensure the rights of all citizens, whether pro-labor or Tea Party, had a voice. Matter of fact, when asked by Governor Walker to close the door and prevent people from entering the Capitol, as respectful as I could do it, I told the governor I wasn't the palace guard. I raised my right hand to protect the Constitution, not only of the United States, but of the state of Wisconsin. And every voice had a right to be heard. I'm also here because I have the great faith in Dr. Lyerly when she becomes a U.S. Congressman to address the reforms needed in law enforcement. There's a need for training. There's a need for new technologies. There's a need to help us recruit the best quality men and women to do this job. Not everybody can do it. It requires, like being in Congress, men and women dedicated with character and values. Values for their fellow citizens. I'm concerned about public safety, as is Dr. Lyerly, with an increase in gun violence across our nation. I have the faith, as a 41-year cop, that she'll help begin that conversation to address the needs of our citizens in communities all across our country, to regulate, not ban, but regulate firearms, to decrease, to take guns out of the hands of those who should not possess them. And as a sheriff, I ran one of the 72 largest mental health institutions in our state, a jail. There are approximately 16,000 people a year booked into the Dane County Jail in Madison. 80% suffer from addiction. And over 45% suffer from a diagnosed mental illness. We need to change in this nation. The fact that we use our jails to deliver medical and mental health care. We don't lock you up for being diabetic or epileptic. Two medical diagnoses. But we use our criminal justice system to lock up those who are mentally ill. And that has to end. It has to end, and it's why I, small country sheriff from Madison, am throwing my support behind Dr. Lyerly. We need people like the doctor in the U.S. Congress. Every one of us. Everyone here today. Everyone viewing. We need to vote. Dr. Lyerly will help us ensure that we protect our processes, the right to vote in a safe and secure environment. And when that vote is done, ensure a smooth transition of power. A smooth transition of power that did not occur on January 6th. A lack of smooth transition of power that resulted in the lives of dedicated police officers. So as I conclude, it's an honor and privilege to be here today with all of you and to throw my support behind the doctor.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
My name is Daniel Hodges. I'm here today in my personal capacity and not on behalf of my employer because I was honored to accept an invitation from Dr. Lyerly to come here today and talk to you about my experiences. I'm an officer with the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police Department. After almost 10 years on the force, I've seen my fair share of crimes, but that did not prepare me for defending our nation's capital on January 6, 2021. The attacks on the police that day were brutal. I was crushed between a door and the insurrectionist. I was beaten with my own baton. I had a concussion, a headache for 2 weeks. I almost had my eye gouged out by a group of insurrectionists pinning me against a wall while one reached underneath my helmet and stuck his thumb in my eye. My fellow officers suffered similar beatings. Right out the jump, one of my sergeants had his finger crushed and he had to later get his fingertip amputated. But at the time, he just stuck some duct tape on it and kept on fighting. Another sergeant was attacked with a cattle prod. We were all soaked head to toe in tear gas and pepper spray, but we kept on fighting. 5 of our colleagues died in defense of democracy. And then we were left to return to work and our lives while being called traitors. On that day, I remember people seeing us and calling us stormtroopers, telling us to remember our oaths, calling us traitors, even though we were the ones defending the capital of the United States against an insurrection. People telling me to be on the right side of history. I think I've secured my place there. The narrative about the defense of the Capitol by myself and my comrades was initially shaped without the voices of police officers. To a certain extent, it was not surprising. We saw the same type of discourse during the summer of 2020. Police officers who couldn't stand down because of a decision made way above their pay grade were vilified for doing their jobs. We hear a lot from elected officials about how law enforcement should operate. Police officers and our departments are frequently used as talking points and political props by both parties. The fact is, in the last 2 years, violent crime has dropped across the country. This is a direct result of the investments made to state and local law enforcement agencies. This idea that we need to choose between backing law enforcement or supporting communities is a false dichotomy. Building healthy, safe communities requires funding the police and public programs. You gotta have both. If you just have one, then the whole thing falls down. If we want officers to be well-trained and departments to invest in community-oriented policing, then we need leaders who understand that Back to the Blue should be more than a slogan. It requires robust funding from local law enforcement agencies and police departments. Right now, departments across the country are facing recruitment and retention issues. Yes, being a police officer is hard and dangerous work. We risk our lives for the public's safety. However, the reason departments are facing this issue is the current stigma attached to policing. That's why we need leaders like Dr. Kristen in Washington, people who are willing to have tough conversations about law enforcement with their colleagues, who believe in pragmatic solutions and doing the right thing, even when it's not considered politically smart. Dr. Kristen Lyerly understands that supporting law enforcement should be a bipartisan issue. She'll show up every day for officers here in Green Bay and across our district. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm going to go a little off script right now, and don't get nervous, okay? My name is Harry Dunn. I'm a former United States Capitol Police officer. I served for over 15 years at the Capitol, and 3 years, almost to the day after January 6th, I quit and decided to run for Congress because I believed there was more that we can do, right? And the reason I say I'm gonna go off script because I lost my primary in May the 14th, but ever since that day, I've been on across the country talking to people to elect good people in Congress. And I've talked to many crowds, but while I'm going off, I feel so extra motivated here right now. This is a special group of people that I'm standing here with, and it feels different, but in such a good way. I am political, right? I do talk politics with people. it's important to. It's important to talk politics and understand what's going on, how politics work. I appreciate your words earlier when he said he used to go up to cars and he would see people shaking or nervous and he would say, oh, they're guilty. Different people's experiences shape how they react to things. January 6th shaped me to be this person that you see standing in front of you. I wish that I wasn't relevant. I wish that people did not know who I was. I wish that I was not standing here. I'm so happy to be, but I wish that I wasn't. That was taken away from me. We have to stand up and fight back, and not in a bad way. You have to be careful with that rhetoric nowadays, it's right? That's the world that we're living in. You have to be careful with that. When I had the opportunity, it was shortly after January 6th when I saw you.
It was.
Yeah,
I
you
believe
and
it was
Craig,
a Packer Washington
football team, yes. I met her at the Capitol, and I was a shell of my former self. I used to be this outgoing, upbeat officer who would just jump up and talk to people, just be happy to be a police officer. I loved what I did, but it made me sad to be a police officer in the times that we were experiencing. Like you said, we had George Floyd going on. It was COVID. It was just so much us versus them. Dr. Lyerly in Congress is going to be a person that cares about people, that cares about others, that cares about results and getting things done, because she will work for people. That's what public servants do. We work for people. We don't do it because the pay is great. We don't do it because we get called, Sheriff, the names that we've been called out on the street for the pay, nobody would willingly sign up just for that, right? It's not worth it. You do it because you care. You do it because it's the right thing to do. Now, this is the political in me talking. The institutions right now, Congress, Senate, the courts, they suck, to be very candid with you all right now. I think they do, right? Because I believe we have a lot of individuals there representing themselves and not the people. Our institutions, on January 6th, we defended them because they are worth protecting. They're worth protecting, but they are only as strong as the people that we send there to represent them. Congress is a fantastic institution. The Supreme Court could be a fantastic institution, but it's the individuals there. That's why we need people like Dr. Lyerly there, people who care, people who want to get things done. I'm just really excited to be here with you right now. I've been all over the country. I've been campaigning for Kamala Harris and all different kind of Senate candidates, but I am really, really excited and motivated to be here right now because it means so much to have the right people representing us, people that will listen and say, this isn't me. I'm a representation of you all. I am your voice in the halls of Congress. So I am so happy to be here right now, and I will do anything I can do. And she has my 100% support. And with that, I turn it over. Who's next? Okay.
Great. Well, good morning, everybody. It's great to see so many old friends. It's great to see some new friends. There are a lot of people I would like to recognize, but I do have to specifically recognize Dave and Jane Hansen. They've served in the state Senate. I like to think of him as a human exclamation point. He brings more energy and vigor and passion to what he does than just about anybody. So it's a privilege to be here. It was a privilege to serve with you. And it's such an honor to be here with this group of people. There are a lot of professions that call on people to serve others and to stand up and make a difference. But I can tell you, as somebody whose stepdad was a police officer in Neenah, whose mom was a prosecutor for a lot of her career, as somebody who is privileged to work with law enforcement officers, both in the Department of Justice and around the state, and as somebody who has seen the heroism of our officers, there are few places where you can make a bigger impact, but it requires more self-sacrifice than our law enforcement officers. We have officers throughout the state of Wisconsin who make a difference in the lives of others day in and day out. A lot of that is not what you see covered in the media. It's an officer who is responding to a late night call to administer Narcan and save somebody from an overdose. It's an officer, as Sheriff Mahoney referred to, who's responding to somebody in the midst of a mental health crisis, who, if they can get the help they need, may be just fine the next day, but having that officer show up, get them somewhere safe, can make the difference. It's officers who are responding to a call about somebody with a gun who's causing a danger. Our officers, day in and day out, protect people's safety. But they do something beyond that, and you've heard people here talk about it. Most interactions that people have with the government are not in a courtroom. They may not be at a government building. They may be that individual encounter when you're stopped in traffic, or when an officer comes up to make sure everything is going okay. Our officers in those one-off conversations, those one-on-one communications, are setting the bar for equal justice under the law, and they are protecting our Constitution, as you've heard about, protecting people's right to protest peacefully. And certainly there is maybe no clearer example of that critical role that our law enforcement plays than what these officers and others did on January 6th to protect our nation's capital and to protect the peaceful transfer of power in the world's greatest democracy. Now, when it comes to supporting our law enforcement and making our communities safer, I want to say a few things. First, we know what works, and you've heard about it from people up here. Our law enforcement officers face incredible challenges that are unique. They are different challenges than many people face day in and day out. Making sure that officers have the training that they need for the situations they may encounter, making sure that we have support for officer wellness, and making sure that when they're responding, they're doing it with up-to-date technology and with the backup that they need because they're hopefully not understaffed and underfunded. That can make the difference between an encounter that goes smoothly and helps to make a community safer and one that creates an unnecessary danger. And so we have seen investment in law enforcement. We have seen resources going to fight crime. And after a historic spike in homicides and shootings, we have now seen historic decreases in homicides, historic decreases in shootings, a drop in overall crime. We've worked in Wisconsin, for example, as other states have, to hold pharmaceutical companies accountable for their role in the opioid epidemic and help to secure about $750 million that's going to fight that epidemic. And for the first time in years, we are now starting to see decreases in opioid-related overdose deaths, including a substantial decrease here in Brown County. What we need are people in Congress and in other offices in the state legislature who are not just going to talk the talk when it comes to supporting our law enforcement, but who are going to walk the walk. And when I say that, what I mean is people who understand that our federal law enforcement officers play a critical role in keeping our communities safe. Not people who are going to demonize the FBI and other federal agencies if they're investigating somebody who they regard as an ally. We need people who are going to support our federal prosecutors when they are even-handedly applying the law and not try to make legitimate investigations into witch hunts. We need people who are going to ensure that our local law enforcement agencies have the resources they need and not people who are going to slash budgets that support the vital work that's being done at the local level. And we need people who, when their allies, the people they perceive as their allies or their supporters, break the law, them to the same standard that everybody else is held to. Because that is how we protect public safety, it's how we protect the rule of law, it's how we protect equal justice under the law, and it's how we protect our Constitution. Now, we need people who understand those values in Congress. And this district in particular has a long history of electing people who are independent. You know, as Attorney General, I've worked with people on both sides of the aisle. I meet with Democrats and Republicans, and where we can find common ground on public safety, we can get things done, and we've gotten a lot done, like strengthening our laws around sexual assault kits. We're working now to get more funding for services for victims of crime. But one of the biggest obstacles we have is partisanship. People know that the investments we're proposing are good ones. We've for years asked for investments in our state crime labs, for example, and not gotten nearly the investment that I would like to see. People know we need those resources, but partisanship gets in the way on so many issues. People wanting to do what their party leaders say and not stand up for the best interests of their constituents. Because when we have folks who are independent, they're going to make those right decisions. They're going to stand up for the members, the people who got them elected. And as I said, in this district, you have a long history of that. I think a lot of your former representatives maybe are not the most popular person at the party convention when they go there. I could go through the history, but I think you all know it well. And look, in the Republican primary for this race, there were two people who had careers in service. There were people who I didn't agree with on a lot of issues, but they were cast aside. They were not the insider choice in that race. This district has a proud history of electing independent representatives, and I can tell you right now, that's the kind of representation that Dr. Kristen Lyerly will bring to this district. She will be an independent voice who is not worried about what some party leader wants to happen or what some donor wants to happen. She's going to be worried about what the people of this district want to happen. That's the kind of leader I want to see for public safety. Not always somebody who will agree with me, but somebody who is committed to doing the right thing, to being an independent voice, and to help make our communities safer and stronger. That's the kind of leader that I know that Dr. Kristen Lyerly is. That's the kind of leader I want to see in Congress. I am incredibly proud to support her campaign. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our guest of honor, Dr. Kristen Lyerly.
How do I even follow all of this? I mean, can we just hear it for these heroes up here? I had no idea. Growing up in Kaukauna, sixth generation Wisconsinite, my family's been in this region for a very long time. I've always been respectful of law enforcement, like so many of us, but I had absolutely no idea what it was like until I met Craig. And he taught me what it's like to be a police officer every morning when you're getting ready to go to work and you're thinking, what am I going to see today? Is it going to be a domestic violence incident? This happens a lot. It's one of the most common calls. If it is, what's going to happen there? What are the mental health issues? Sheriff Mahoney talked about mental health being a huge piece of what is happening in the Dane County jails and really all over the state. Why are we so bad at treating mental health at its core? Why are we so bad? Attorney General Call talked about the opioid epidemic, something that I see in my practice. People who are suffering from addiction, their families are suffering, but we can't treat it. We don't invest in people and in communities. And law enforcement, those are the folks that end up dealing with the consequences. As an OBGYN doctor, I not only see this, domestic violence, opioid issues, but so much more that regular people have to live with every single day. And, I'm a mom, too. I have 4 young sons. In fact, my youngest son, James, over there, just got his license about an hour ago. So now I'm even more concerned about law enforcement on the roads. Sorry, buddy. But, as a partner, again, back to Craig, a couple of years ago, he came home with his portraits. They'd just gotten all their new pictures. And he said, which one do you like? And I said, I like the one with you smiling. And he said, I like that one too, but I have to have one looking serious, in case something happens. I don't think about that when I get my portrait taken for work. But that's something that he thinks about every day. And that's something that we need to think about as citizens who support our law enforcement, but often take them for granted. I want to tell you a little bit about everybody who's up here, because they're all here for a reason. So, Attorney General Call. I've been so honored to work with you on the 1849 criminal abortion ban here in Wisconsin. It hasn't been easy for me as a doctor who put my foot down and said, I need to do this for my patients. But he has been a visionary leader when it comes to protecting reproductive rights in the state, opioids, tobacco, so much more. He's a brilliant leader, and I'm just so honored to be here with you. Sheriff Mahoney, we go way back. When I was a young mom, I volunteered for Wisconsin Public Television. We volunteer in our community because that's how you knit a community together, is by taking care of each other and pitching in when things need to be helped out. So I volunteered. I was in charge of the dollars at Garden Expo. And then, I don't know what your rank was, but it wasn't sheriff. You were Detective Mahoney was protecting the cash. So we would chat a lot of talking. And turns out he's become this incredible leader, not just in the state, not just in Dane County, not just in the state, but nationally as the former president of the National Sheriff's Association. And such an important voice in law enforcement, where the culture can often be very conservative, very reluctant to talk about what's actually happening on the job. But Sheriff Mahoney has never strayed away from his North Star, which is making sure that we have safe and healthy communities. So thank you, Sheriff. Hey, I'm going to skip you and go to Harry. I'll come back to you. Harry Dunn. Craig and I went to a Packer game in Washington, and we were at the Capitol. And Craig said, I think that's the guy from TV. So we stalked him. And sure enough, there he was, sitting at the exit. We just bumped into him. And we introduced ourselves, and we described ourselves as Packer fans, and he did not. And we talked about January 6th, and it was during that time when things were still really raw and really hard. And he was so candid about his experiences and about how hard it was to do the job, because there he was protecting the people every day who walked by and said thank you, but weren't there for him when he needed them the most. And the courage that it must have taken for you to step out of your role as a police officer and to step into a role running for Congress, being in a different kind of public service. It's a totally different world. Yeah. So I truly can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk to these two tourists, annoying Packer fans, and everything you've done since then and everything you will do in the future.
We did go to Lambeau yesterday, had a great tour, and go Packers. Go Packers.
Hey, and Danny, we only recently met, but you are so courageous and so brilliant. And although you tend to get described as the guy who got his head squashed in the door on January 6th, your courage, tenacity, desire to do great things in the world. I mean, this is a man who's a police officer who's also a full-time student because he has a vision for a better tomorrow. This is a guy who's this is vacation time for him. Getting to know you over these past couple days has been an absolute joy, and I'm pretty sure that we did turn you into a Packer fan on Sunday. And Steve, I don't have as many flowery words for you because I get to see you all the time, but thank you for opening up the Labor Temple for us. Thank you for making this event possible today.
Labor is very proud to have these guests here today and everything. We're all law and order.
We are all law and order. So again, as a person who never really engaged with law enforcement before, but stands here before you with the support of these incredible gentlemen, these heroes, and especially my partner, Craig, who has a much greater appreciation than I did before, who understands that law enforcement is so much more than the squad car you just passed on the highway, and you better slow down right now. But it's all of the support and the technology and the connections and the education, and there's so much that goes into it. And in order for us to have a functional law enforcement system from the bottom all the way to the top, we've got to invest. And the only way we do that is by electing leaders who understand and who are willing to invest in our communities and who recognize that safety, public health, community are priorities for all of us. Thank you for being here today.